So now I want to start working on the actual interactive part of our site. And that's the part where people get to search for reservations, to search for a date range and decide whether or not they actually want to stay on a certain day and whether or not the room is available on the days they want to stay there. So I'm on the reservation page right now, and it's just a placeholder. But we're going to use this to build a form. And forms are kind of cool. So I'm back on the Bootstrap documentation. And I'm going to go to, let's see, content. And no, not in there. Maybe it's under here somewhere. Yeah, there it is, under components, forms. And this tells us how we can build forms. So this is the sort of thing we're going to be building right here. A place where people can type things in and submit the actual form to find out whether or not the dates they want are available. So how do we do that? Well, here's an example of a form, and that is one way to do it. So I can just copy this just as a starter and go over to my reservations page, and I'll change this to search for availability, which you can call whatever you want, but I'm going to call it that. I'm going to move that down a little bit, and remember we can do that by using class, margin top, and we'll put 5. I'll move it down a fair bit, and there's got to be a dash in there. So if I save that and then paste the form in and format it a little bit better, and this form is going to change a lot, so don't worry that it doesn't have the right information yet. Save it and go back and reload this page and just see what it looks like. Search for availability. Well, already it looks pretty good. So what kinds of things do we need to know at the point where we're searching for availability? Well, all we really need to know at this point is a starting date and an ending date. So this is really not appropriate. So let's go back here and change the label. First of all, let's look at the actual way a form is built. So I'm going to space these things out so we can see them a little bit. And here. A form begins with a form tag. And you can just use a form tag, but it actually needs a little more information. Every form has to have an action, and that is an HTML attribute. So you put the keyword action followed by an equal sign followed by something in parentheses. And the action is, where do you want the information filled out on this form to be sent? And where you're going to send it, of course, is to some URL. So we're actually not going to make this form functional right now, so I'm going to leave that empty. We can't make it functional until we actually start working in Go and handling the posted form data. But what we can fill out is method equals, and it's either get or post. Well, let's look at the difference between these two. We'll make the action right now. We'll just show how this works. We'll say the action is equal to this page. So it is reservation.html. So we'll make the action the same thing as this page, same address as this page, .html. And I'll make the method equal to get, which can be uppercase or lowercase. It's entirely up to you. And I'm going to get rid of the password because we don't need the password. And I'm just going to leave this email address. I'll relabel that to starting date. And then I will change the help text here, which is something that enter your starting date. And we'll make this really a stupid form right now. We'll make it smarter later. In the form of year, month, day. And I know the Americans listening to this don't like that format, but this is the ISO standard, and I'm in Canada, so I can put whatever I want. And of course, so can you. If you don't like that format, choose another one. But that's the format we'll be using when we actually submit data, but we're not going to force people to type it in. A few other things here. Label for, example input email. Well, this is for some ID. And I'm going to call this start date. So this has to match the input, which is this part. The input actually draws this part of the form, the part where they can type things in. It has to match whatever the label, the ID, the for tag on the for attribute on the label tag is. So this has an ID, and we'll change that to start date. And something, for some reason, I've never understood why, but they always do this. The people who write the documentation at Bootstrap leave the most important part of the form out, and that is the name of the attribute, of the input attribute. And the name here can be whatever I want, but I'm going to call it start date. So it has this name of start date, it has the ID of start date, it's of type email. Well, let's make that text because we don't require this to be an email. So an input of type text, class of form control. All that does is make it look like a Bootstrap form, in other words, nice. The ID matches the for attribute on the label. The name, and this is critical because that's what we're going to use to pull information out of the post in Go. And the describe by is email help, but we'll call this start date help, just because that's what it actually is. And all that does is allows screen readers to read some text out. All right, so we have that. And we don't need this checkbox, so we'll get rid of that. And we'll save this and go look at our form. Reload. Okay, so search for availability. And I got to put my date in there. Now, you'll remember that I gave this form the type, input type of text, and that I gave the form itself the method of get. So let's submit this and see what happens. Nothing's going to happen except we'll come back to this page. But I'll put the date in here, 2021-06-01, June the 1st, 2021. Now look up here where it says reservation.html. I'm submitting this form using the method of get. When I submit it, it actually takes me to reservation.html start date equals. Notice how it put that information back there? Okay. So that is, I probably misnamed the file. It looks like I did. Let me go back here and fix that just so it'll work the way we want it to be. This file is called reservation.html, and I'm going to, oh yes, I'm not on a web server, so I have to do this. Let's go back here and just load the page again. Open, go here. Hopefully this will actually do it this time. Put some date in there, 2021-06-01, submit. And it does. It takes me back here. And it put whatever I entered in the form after a question mark, the name of the input attribute, which matches what you see right here, the name of the input attribute right here, equals whatever I typed in. So if I, again, type in something here like 2022-06-01 and hit submit, all that's going to change is the date. Changes from what it was to what I entered. Okay, so that is what a get does. Now what if I change it to a post? Well, I can't here because I'm not running a web server. But the important thing is if I run this as a post, it's actually going to not show this information. When you submit a form using post, it hides all that data, doesn't put it in the address bar of a web browser, and kind of encodes it differently. When you put it as a get, it does encode it differently. Now the advantage of putting something in a get is if I submit the form using get and then hit the back button in my web browser, it'll just display the previous page. Probably won't repopulate the form data, but it will actually re-display the page. If I submit a form using post and hit the back button on a web browser, you get a little warning dialog that says, this page wants to submit a form again. Are you sure you want to proceed? Yes or no? So that's one of the differences between the two. Now there are ways around that, and when we actually get to processing form data, we'll handle those situations. But for right now, we're just going to build a form. So I have a starting date. Probably I'd like to have an ending date too. Now I could do this. I could come here, just copy this whole thing, paste it down here, call this ending date, and call this end date, and copy the for and make it the ID and make it the name, and call this end date help, and copy that and paste it here, and anything else, enter your ending date in the form of year, month, day, and that'll work. I can actually do that. So I have a starting date and I have an ending date. It would be nicer, though, if there were two changes to this form. Number one, let's put these things beside each other. So put a starting date here, and right beside it, put an ending date here, and then have my submit button underneath it. And also, if when I clicked on this, it displayed a calendar instead of forcing people to remember to type a 4-digit year and a hyphen, and a 2-digit month and a hyphen, and a 2-digit day and a hyphen, which is a real pain. Well, we can do that. We can change it really easily. We can change the first, let's just do the calendar pick first. So modern browsers have a type of date for input and a type of date for input. So if I save this and reload the page and click in here, now I have a date picker, see? So I can come in here and say, oh, well, I don't want 2020, I want 2021, I want June, and I want, that's fine, so that's good. I got that. Now I want June the 1st. Perfect. And now the date's in exactly the right format, or in a format I can work with anyway. The only problem with this is if I copy this, I'm in Firefox right now. If I start up, say, Chrome, and paste in the same address, yes, you can access files on my desktop, it doesn't work quite the same way. So for example, I can click on the YYYY and start typing 2021. But to make the calendar come up, I actually have to click over here. And it's a different looking calendar. That's because the actual generation of the calendar using the input type equals date is delegated to the browser. So browsers often, well, they all have their own date picker if they have one at all. Some just leave it as a text input. So this is sufficient for our purposes now. But really, down the road, I'm probably going to want to install a slightly better calendar picker. All right, let's go back and think about what we're going to do next. We want to actually move this from down here to up here. And then we want to put in something that makes it clear whether or not a date is available. Well, we can't do that last part until we actually get to go, but we can get going. We can do certain other things. We could say this should be a required field. And this should be a required field. In other words, I shouldn't be able to submit this form like I am right now. That's actually giving me an invalid date, but again, that's from Chrome, not from us at all. But we'll go back to Firefox that I'm used to using and reload the page. And here we have our calendar picker, but what if they don't specify an end date? What if they try to submit it right now? Well, that's a bit of a problem. We need to make sure that both fields are required. We'll do that and a little bit more cleanup in the next lecture.